Well, hope you're having a good Thursday, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. To say it was an active morning is to say the very least. Obviously, our fair share of widespread severe thunderstorm warnings. And within those severe thunderstorms, we had plenty of tornado warnings. I believe around 8 or 9, maybe even up to 10 tornado warnings that we did have issued across Central Georgia this morning. So first things first, before we get into what's ahead with your forecast, let's talk about what happened earlier this morning. So we do have a couple of damage reports to give you and kind of just painting the picture for what you don't necessarily get to see outside when you're watching our coverage. Typically, we are obviously going to see our fair share of active images here on the Skycam. This is a time lapse that our lovely friend up the road of I-75, Alex Forbes, did send in across our Warner Auburn Skycam because obviously we were more worried about the current satellite and radar imagery. You can see that maybe one or two folks did try to brave the elements out here on Sutherland Drive and Cohen Walker Drive. However, that rain has some very fast motion to it. And take a look at some of these trees right here by the Health Sciences campus. You can see how heavy that rain is paired up with those very gusty winds up to 50, 60 miles per hour, I do anticipate, but not too far away from the sky camera as you make your way over to the west on Highway 16, Highway 96, I should say, making your way over to I-75. That's where we did see at least the brunt of the impacts associated with this severe thunderstorm. Taking a look at the sky, I don't know quite how long this time-lapse view does go. I imagine it's quite a while, but it does look like the visibility is improving. So I think we kind of started it in the middle of where the brunt of those impacts were. And you did have some very, very limited visibility. You can see all these cars that did venture out. They have their caution lights on, and they are continuing to kick up their fair share of some rainfall that is down at the surface. And these trees continue to sway back and forth at a pretty good clip, pretty violently. Actually, we're seeing the winds pick up right here. Let's see if we can stay on this for a little bit longer to see if this tells us a bit of a better story. But I imagine that time-lapse video is going to be quite a while long. So then I want to go over to the Peach-Houston County line. So a little bit over from where that Skycam was that we were talking about. We're seeing some very large trees snapped in half like toothpicks. This is indicative of some very, very strong straight line wind damage, or this is going to be indicative of something of the tornadic damage. This is actually going to be right around my neighborhood where I live. So if you did hear my voice getting a little bit shaky this morning, that was because I did see that rotation getting pretty close to where I do live. Very thankfully, everyone that I've heard reports of in my end of the neighborhood and on that side of town is looking good to go. There's just our fair share of damage that we do have to clean up. But all of these trees are very, very tall. They're pretty old in nature as well. And you normally can't see too far out past these kind of initial tree lines, just past the bushes down here, the hedges. But you can see almost a good portion of that forest way off in the distance. And obviously, it's things like the pool basketball goal, umbrellas, chairs, even tree limbs that are snapped and fallen on those hedges, along with portions of the fencing of many houses has been damaged because of that those downed trees right there on the Peach and Houston County line. And we do have some reports of some pretty drastic damage that some of our reporters are going ahead and gathering information about down at Ponderosa RV Park, just off the I-75 exit of Highway 96. Marshall Drive up here in Macon. We did have another tornado warned storm up here in the Macon area. It popped up around the Lake Wildwood and the Lake Tobesofkee areas, that signature did, and then it moved all the way across basically the northern portion of Bibb County. Well, this is right off Riverside Drive, Marshall Drive, where we did have reports of this tree that downed on this house, and there was someone elderly that was reported trapped in there, but the first responders did help get her out unscathed, very thankfully. But just giving you the idea of, once again, these very large trees that have been uprooted or snapped in half, and they can fall onto some steady structures like this. This does look like a very well-built home right there with some brick siding, so I imagine that is going to be to thank for that tree not going farther down whatsoever. But like we did say, there was someone elderly that was reported trapped in there, and very thankfully our first responders did help that beautiful lady out. Now let's go over to the Lockwold subdivision. Lockwold, I believe I'm saying that correctly. This is also up here in the Macon area. All this side paneling from the houses just completely ripped off. Now, once again, all of this damage that we're getting reported so far, it has not been confirmed that it is a tornado on the ground, but we are seeing a lot of indications of maybe something in the way of some tornado indicated damage. The National Weather Service will be coming down and kind of surveying the area over the course of today and tomorrow. All those areas where we did have tornado warned storms, and maybe even some areas that are reporting damage that we didn't necessarily see. We have a lot of reports of some damage down in Macon County this morning, and I don't believe we actually had a tornado-warned storm there. So it could be attributed to some straight line wind damage. And I just want to emphasize the fact that those severe thunderstorms with the straight line winds did their fair share of damage as well. The winds didn't necessarily need to be rotating in the form of a tornado that we did see, but it could have resulted in maybe some slightly gustier winds than just what we see on a severe thunderstorm warning. Most of those gusts within the severe thunderstorm warnings were around maybe 58 to 60 miles per hour in some isolated pockets. If we did have something in the way of a brief spin-up tornado, those winds are going to very likely be somewhere around 70, maybe even up to 80 or 90 miles per hour, kind of in that EF0, EF1 range, and they've done their fair share of damage, even as some low-end tornadoes. But then something else that happened during our coverage this morning, I thought I was just seeing things, or maybe we were having a bit of an issue with our Skycam down in Dublin. However, we got many reports of this. Take a look at the color of the sky. This was before the storms rolled in to areas of northern Lawrence County. It is almost completely orange. Now, Amanda Kemp said this into the 13 WMAZ Weather Network in Dexter. She did say that no filter was added, although this wasn't quite the image I did see. I wouldn't be doubting if maybe the saturation is enhanced a little bit, but nonetheless, it is definitely a pretty ominous scene with the sky turning a different color, kind of an orange or kind of a yellow before some storms do roll in. I have seen reports of maybe the sky turning a green color, possibly during some severe weather events, and I think that's just due to the reaction of certain chemicals within our atmosphere. I'm working with the National Weather Service to give you an explanation for this, but I don't really think it's attributed to the widespread pollen that we've had as of recently. Obviously, that would be a very similar color to what you've seen in terms of that film on your windshield and on the hood of your cars. So now that we are wrapping up a very messy start to the day, let's talk about what we are going to see in the future as we head towards the weekend. All of this rain and all this severe weather and storms came in the form of a cold front. So a cold front has made its passage through, and that is going to have implications for your forecast as we go into this afternoon, tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, all the way until we get into the end of the weekend. So let's go ahead and talk about what we see here around the quad here in central Georgia. So up here, downtown Macon and Warner Robins, a very refreshing sight to see, and that is going to be some blue sky peeking through some of the scattered cumulus clouds that are still left in the sky. Perry looks like it's got a bit of a freezing issue. In fact, all of our Skycams look to have a little bit of a bandwidth issue right now, and typically we do have our fair share of problems when some severe storms do roll through, and it looks like they are freezing up a little bit on occasion, but I still can get an image right now in downtown Dublin that shows me that rain showers are continuing down in Lawrence County. If you are making your way out and about a little bit later into the morning, remember I was saying make your morning commute a little bit later than usual to allow for some time for that heaviest band, that leading edge of rainfall, winds, and anything else in the way of those severe weather concerns to move through. And now we are going to settle into a very beautiful rest of your Thursday as a matter of a fact, but we're still holding on to at least some residual rain on the backside of this frontal boundary. Again, your severe weather risk is over here in central Georgia for the remainder of today, really for the remainder of the next week ahead. We're not seeing any signs of any more severe weather makers making their way in, but we will refer to our next rain chance, which will come in about 3 to 4 days. So here's a look at your temperatures. Low 50s up to the north and the northwest behind our frontal boundary. These areas up to the northwest, they're the first to see this cooler air mass as it does funnel in that same direction that the frontal boundary did push in from. Low 50s transitioning into mid 50s, some upper 50s, and then southeast central Georgia. Still holding on to the low 60s and maybe some mid 60s down in McRae and down in Vidalia. What if I told you that these numbers have gotten a pretty substantial drop over the course of this morning? We're actually not hitting our morning low temperature right there in the textbook morning time frame around sunrise. We are actually going to hit it here over the next hour or so, where we are seeing some of these numbers dip well down into the 50s, but areas farther down to the south and the southeast are not going to see the numbers get necessarily that chilly. It's going to be a little bit of a temperature difference from northwest all the way down to the southeast. But we did see temperatures that were widespread in the upper 60s and low 70s this morning as this front made its way through. That is going to rival what the morning low temperatures are on some summertime mornings. So yeah, definitely a very warm start, a very noticeably warm and humid environment that front clashed in with. But this is also the main story for the rest of today. Widespread red, some pockets of some pink up to the northwest. We have some very gusty winds that are present right now. Gusts up to 36 miles per hour in Macon, 33 miles per hour down in Warner Robins, 25 down in Cochran, 28 miles per hour in Milledgeville. And notice your sustained winds, what the winds are consistently blowing at. are going to be up to around 20 to 25 miles per hour up in Bibb County and down in Houston County. So we did have a little bit of a lull in terms of the breezy conditions as we went throughout sometime this morning after the initial passage of that frontal boundary. But on the backside, we are looking at some very gusty winds building into your forecast. And we are going to push out anything in the way of remaining moisture in your forecast, where the dew point temperatures have gotten up into the upper 60s and the low 70s. We are pushing all of that green color out to the south and the southeast, and we will continue to watch the numbers dip down into the 40s, and I imagine maybe even dew point temperatures in the 30s for a completely dry environment as we round out your Thursday afternoon. So here's where your satellite and radar is still standing. I imagine the frontal boundary itself is actually crossing down in southeast central Georgia right now. It is sparking a thin line of maybe some relatively steady and some heavy rain, but no flashes of lightning. And of course, the gustier winds are actually present back behind that line, behind the frontal boundary itself. But that's what we are continuing to deal with down in areas like Dooley and Chris counties, Pulaski, Wilcox, down to Dodge County, Lawrence County, areas like Johnson and getting all the way up into Washington County, and then some scattered sprinkles out ahead of that very thin line of some heavy rain that continues to push down to the south and the southeast. And then we'll start to see these gaps in the cloud coverage as we go throughout the back half of today up to the northwest, and that will continue to filter down to the southeast as well. Actually, I jumped a little bit too quick. I did want to talk about something because that frontal boundary is having more implications over to the east of us. Take a look at this active picture. This is what central Georgia looked like just a couple of hours ago around the Columbia area as that front does continue to push over to the east. This very big yellow box that you do see around Myrtle Beach and Wilmington, that's going to be a severe thunderstorm watch that is in place for areas of coastal South Carolina, coastal North Carolina, but the big red box that you see, that's still a tornado watch that is in place for areas of East Georgia and getting over into the portion of kind of central South Carolina, and then where you actually do see a little bit of actually kind of drawing with some of those severe thunderstorm warnings. That's going to be what is present to the east of Columbia and going to make their push over to areas like Florence and Myrtle Beach and eventually up into North Carolina. Actually, our fair share of some pretty substantial rain crowding the Charlotte area just up I-77 as you make your way up to the northern portion of South Carolina. So that's where your tornado watch does still stand. We actually still have one in place for the Augusta area, but I think that has probably been allowed to expire. This tornado watch has been going on for a little bit longer and lingering a little bit longer than what the severe weather window was. We actually saw it wrap up just before the 9 a.m. hour, probably sometime around 8:30, 8:45 this morning. But we held on to the tornado watch for a little while longer. Nonetheless, we're all in the clear now, and that tornado watch will continue to creep back over to the east and get trimmed off from west to east. So let's talk about some numbers now. 85 degrees. That is definitely well warmer than your average high temperature of 69 degrees this time of year. And we fell 1 degree shy of matching the record set back in 1925 originally, but that record was also matched in 1955. Thought that 2026 was going to add another tally of 86 degrees, but that was definitely not the case. So for the month of March, it has been very, very warm. Today is finally going to put an end to a stretch of 8 days in a row, not only above average, but roughly in the neighborhood of around 10 degrees above average each and every day at the very least. 83 and 85, those have been the kind of common denominators for your high temperature over the course of the last week. We've only had one day that was below average, and that was courtesy of the wedge setup that we had on the third day of March. That not going to be the case throughout today. That is actually going to be some cooler air that is filtering in from the north and the northwest. But out of 11 days in the month of March, 10 of them have been above average, and a good deal of them have been well above average. So we thought we might break some records yesterday, ended up not being the case. That's fine. I think we probably broke a couple records today in terms of severe weather implications that we did have. So we obviously have had our plates full weather-wise, but I did want to mention that 63, that was your warmest morning low yesterday. We went a little bit below that at 60 degrees for a recorded low, and your record high temperature fell 1 degree shy of that. That's fine by all means. We don't need to be breaking a record for the warmest afternoon that we have seen, but it's quite a flipping of the script. How about 85 for a high yesterday? I'm forecasting a high of 65 later on this afternoon. So about a 20-degree drop in between yesterday's high temperature and today's high temperature. And some areas may not even make it up into the mid-60s. Remember that temperature difference we were talking about from northwest all the way down to southeast central Georgia? That is what's going to continue to be present throughout this afternoon. So northwest central Georgia, you may not make it out of the upper 50s. Macon might be more so in the lower 60s, but 65 and some upper 60s are going to be present farther down to the south and the southeast. 65 is what I like to call one of those middle ground high temperatures. But of course, the main story is going to be, number one, getting rid of this thunderstorm icon, which I forgot to change on the forecast editor, number one. But some mostly sunny skies. In fact, some completely sunny skies are going to be in store as we wrap up today. And we are going to continue to deal with some very breezy conditions out of the northwest, 10 to 15 miles per hour. I would actually go ahead and say 10 to about 20, maybe even 25 miles per hour for just the sustained winds, what they're consistently blowing at. The occasional gust is going to be even higher than that, up to 30 to maybe 35 miles per hour, which you will see here in just a moment with the wind advisory that has been issued. So here's a look at your hour-by-hour temperature warm-up. Overall, not too different from how it currently feels outside. You are definitely feeling that much colder air mass filter in real time, and you are going to feel it as we go into the afternoon, where 4, 5, and 6 o'clock once again going to be kind of the daily window where we do hit that high temperature each and every day from now on, now that we do have a little bit of a later sunset. So here's a look at future view. There goes that steady clearing all the way into 5 o'clock, still holding on to some windy conditions. There might be a few clouds still in the picture, so maybe not crystal clear, but if we're not crystal clear by the end of today, I promise you we will be tomorrow. Going ahead and flashing forward all the way to Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. as you're wrapping up the work week. It is going to feel a little bit better and a little bit warmer, kind of around where we should be for your high temperature tomorrow afternoon. And we are going to deal with the winds finally subsiding. They are going to begin to shift direction. And we really don't receive any talking points other than the temperatures until we finally get sometime into the later hours of Saturday, where we start to see some cloud cover creeping up from the south and eventually a couple of scattered light showers, maybe some sprinkles. Might welcome you out the door for the morning commute out to church on Sunday morning. We'll continue to fine-tune that as we get closer, but we are dealing with some scattered shower chances as we go into the end of the weekend on Sunday. More impressive rain chances lie ahead on Monday to kickstart the work week next week. So there was that lull in the winds that we did see immediately behind that leading edge of heaviest rain and severe weather, and then we are watching the winds build back in. Right behind the frontal boundary, gusts up to 30, maybe even 35 miles per hour. They go down a little bit into the rest of this afternoon and evening, but not really noticing much of a difference. Gusts up to 25, 27 miles per hour, not too different from a gust that gets up to 35 miles per hour. But overnight into tomorrow morning, we will watch the breeze subside. Won't be dealing with much in the way of winds throughout your Friday and going all the way into your Saturday morning. As we go into the end of the weekend, we might start to see some winds build back into the forecast, but overall, not really of concern. It's mainly just the winds for the rest of today, which has warranted this wind advisory for all of central Georgia, which essentially means that it is going to be a little bit gustier than your typical day. We do see some days that we have gusts up to 20, maybe 25 miles per hour. Yesterday afternoon was a great example of that. But when you have a wind advisory, you typically get the gusts up to around 35, maybe even close to 40 miles per hour, which doesn't seem like a lot. However, that is going to be the same intensity as tropical storm force winds, believe it or not. And that's looking to be pretty widespread all the way until around 8 p.m. this evening is where we have the potential for those gusts up to 35 miles per hour. And then, like I said, as we head into your Friday, we won't have some very windy conditions. We'll have some more pleasant feeling temperatures in the afternoon. But we do have to talk about your morning lows because that is going to be quite a chilly atmosphere that you need to go ahead and prepare yourself to walk out the door to. 37 degrees as you walk out the door tomorrow morning. I can't remember the last time that we got down into the 30s. I'll do some more research once I get some more time to prep for this stream and we don't have widespread severe weather before it as we go into tomorrow. And I'll do a little bit of statistics hunting for you, but 37 degrees, 42 degrees on Saturday morning. Make plans to dress in layers both Friday and Saturday afternoons, especially Saturday, because you're going to walk out the door to a chilly environment. But I promise you, you are not going to want any form of layering as you head into the afternoon. That is flirting with 80 degrees already. So we have a brief cool down, I guess you could say, but we are going to warm up just as quick as we cool down. And in fact, this warm up that we see across the course of the beginning of the weekend all the way into your Sunday, it's going to be pretty short-lived as well. Because take a look at what happens to your temperatures after Sunday. They drop back down into the upper 60s for highs on Monday in light of a cloudy and a bit of a rainy atmosphere that we should have for the first part of Monday into the afternoon. And then we are going to watch another cooler air mass, a reinforcing push, and a good reminder that it once again is still not the official start of spring just yet. And we are going to watch those numbers drop back down the roller coaster as we go into Monday afternoon. Your average high temperature has actually crept up to 70 degrees at long last, so the 70s are going to become more of the normal. But in fact, as of recently, 80s have been the normal in terms of your afternoon highs. So we are going to get maybe back according to schedule a little bit more, seeing our fair share of some 70s after we see this cool down towards the beginning of next week. But we are going to have, once again, another roller coaster ride on your morning low temperatures. 53 this morning, and actually that low temperature is being hit right now at around the 11 a.m. hour. That number drops down into the 30s tomorrow, 42 on Saturday. And Sunday and Monday mornings are feeling mighty pleasant. Maybe not quite as warm and humid as we did feel early this morning. However, 53 and 52, those numbers will drop back down once again as we go into the beginning of next week. So here's a look at your long-range models. As we go into Sunday afternoon, like I mentioned, expect some scattered, spotty, light showers for the most part. Maybe a rumble of thunder could be possible, just given that we are going to warm back up to near the 80-degree mark, and we are going to start to see more humidity back in the forecast. And that's what's this next frontal boundary is going to clash with. This is the most impressive and widespread rain chances have looked as we go into the beginning of next week so far. It does give the indication that we will receive our fair share of some widespread showers. Wouldn't even doubt maybe a few thunderstorms. Each and every frontal boundary that does come through this time of year, all the way until we get sometime into the middle and late portion of May, it is going to possibly come with a severe weather tag like we did see as of this morning, but this is not looking near as impressive as this morning's system did look, say, about a week out ahead of time. We'll continue to keep you posted, but I would plan on walking out the door to a bit of a messy atmosphere next Monday morning, and hopefully it will clear out by the time we head into the afternoon and the evening, but it's not going to be crystal clear skies like we're seeing behind this frontal boundary today and tomorrow. It is looking like we are going to keep some moisture in the forecast for maybe some scattered cloud cover, or we might see a clearer environment than anticipating. Nonetheless, we're not talking about rain chances as we go into next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And next Tuesday is going to be an important date to have some dry weather in the forecast because, as you will see on your 7-day forecast, it's St. Patrick's Day. Hard to believe we are about to cross over the halfway point in the month of March, but St. Patrick's Day, it's not going to feel like St. Patrick's Day or feel like we're approaching spring. It is going to be a chilly one. 55 for a high temperature. We're walking out to morning low temperatures near freezing. So now that we are out of our weather impact alert as of today, I want to turn your focus to what the next possible weather impact alert is going to be, and that could be our last freeze that we do see here in the late portion of winter, starting to transition into spring. 33 degrees for a morning low on Tuesday and Wednesday. Some models are even calling for 32 degrees itself. So we are going to continue to keep a close eye on that. National Weather Service has already highlighted the potential for some frost and freeze products to be issued as we go into next Tuesday and Wednesday. And given how warm we've been as of recently, a lot of plants are already starting to prematurely bloom. Maybe a lot of you have already begun to plant stuff in your backyard garden, maybe some crops out there. You're going to want to make sure that all of those plants that you've already started growing, they are going to be properly protected as you go into next Tuesday and Wednesday morning, where we do have the potential for maybe some frost and maybe even some freeze conditions to provide maybe a little bit of damage to maybe some of those crops and some of those plants. So we want to make sure that we are keeping you updated about that last potential freeze that we could have. And I think that's going to be next Tuesday into next Wednesday. Hopefully we don't see any signs of potentially seeing another big time cool down, which I don't see in the cards whatsoever as we go into the very end of March. But in fact, next Tuesday, St. Patrick's Day, that's the 17th. The 20th, next Friday, is going to be the first day of spring. And of course, it will be the first day of the Cherry Blossom Festival up here in Macon. I do expect temperatures to warm back up as we go into that first official day of spring. So hopefully get back to some more appropriate feeling numbers, maybe out of the 60s, somewhere with highs in the low 70s, and maybe some morning lows that are somewhere with a slight chill, maybe just in the 40s per se. But your 7-day forecast will be a roller coaster ride. We're going up the roller coaster after we get through tomorrow morning. Each afternoon and each morning will get a little bit warmer after that. And then between Sunday into Monday, after the passage of another frontal boundary that brings us some more shower chances at the very least, but maybe possibly some thunderstorms along with it. That is going to move through as we go into the beginning of the work week next week, going to result in some rain-cooled air or maybe some cooler air already beginning to filter in as of Monday afternoon. And then we're really going to feel that colder snap as we go into St. Patrick's Day morning and we go into next Wednesday morning. So that's what I had on my next graphic, just to highlight The degree of drasticness between your Sunday and your Monday mornings, and then the environment that you're walking out to on Tuesday and Wednesday. Once again, kind of like we were talking about yesterday's high temperatures and today's high temperatures, a 20-degree drop from Sunday into Tuesday and Wednesday. So it sounds good. And we are going to definitely feel like our fair share of a reminder that it is still officially the very tail end of the winter season. Numbers getting back down around 10 degrees below that average of 44 degrees. But until we get there, let's soak up a beautiful weekend forecast, especially Friday afternoon, Saturday afternoon, and even Sunday afternoon. 20% chance of rain. I always say this is never a good reason in order to cancel anything in the way of some outdoor plans. Continue to soak up those 80s. Maybe while they last for one more day. Could be quite a while before we see them again, maybe until we get into the month of April. But again, not seeing any signs of a major cool down after we get through that cold snap at kind of the beginning and more so towards the middle of next week. So that's what to be on the lookout for. We'll let you know if anything does change with maybe possible thunderstorm implications as we go into Monday. Not seeing the parameters this far out, but those details will get fine-tuned as we get a lot closer. Very similar to how this morning's forecast did. But first and foremost, I want to go ahead and thank you for tuning in to all the coverage that we did have throughout this morning. It was quite a lot to keep up with. There was tornado warning after tornado warning, and I was trying to hone in on the specific location of just about each and everywhere that did have a tornado warned storm. The National Weather Service has said they're going to get out and about today, tomorrow, over the course of this weekend at the very latest to assess all the damage with some of those tornado warned storms, which we're seeing reports of damage all over central Georgia. So continue to stay updated with us in our newscast at midday and our newscast later on this afternoon into the evening. We'll be providing you with all the updates that you need to know, where that damage has been the worst. And of course, we'll let you know if that was caused by a tornado or that was going to be more so caused by some straight line winds associated with some severe thunderstorms. But given some of the rotation signatures we did see earlier this morning, I would say that we probably are looking at least maybe one or two at the very least in terms of some brief spin up tornadoes, maybe some EF0 or EF1s. Nonetheless, not set in stone as of just yet. We will continue to keep you updated, and we'll talk about the specific path of maybe some of those tornadoes once we get confirmation from the National Weather Service. But I can't thank you enough for tuning in and trusting us here at 13 WMAZ to keep you safe. And we will continue to do so as this kind of just kicked off our severe weather season, unfortunately. We're still going to have our fair share of systems over the next couple of months that do pose those severe thunderstorm and those low-end tornado risks. So we will continue to keep you updated with each and every one of them, and we will continue to keep you updated on all other aspects of the weather that you do need to know. But I'm very happy to report that so far we're not seeing any reports of injuries or anything in the way of casualties, very thankfully, and we are going to continue to enter a nice stretch of weather to take us into the end of the work week after we did have a pretty active forecast here this Thursday morning. So soak up Friday afternoon, soak up Saturday afternoon, and maybe be prepared to duck and dodge a shower or two on Sunday. But nonetheless, soak up those warmer temperatures before cool down number 2 arrives, and that's going to be for St. Patrick's Day into next Wednesday towards the middle of next week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here at 11 a.m. tomorrow for another look at your extended forecast for the weekend ahead.